I am standing dominantly over the burnt corpse of Gul'dan because I showed up for only one fight in that heroic attempt, and I am very happy. This is a new episode of For Azeroth. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, and lording over me for the rest of my WoW-playing career is Jocelyn Moffett.
Absolutely, Garrett. You have that to look forward to.
Lovely. I'll still invoke, like, I played for like 5 years before you ever even thought about this game. Rawr. That's what I'll do. That's what I'll pull out in that exact voice every single time. Hey, man, dude, which I use as a gender-neutral term. Congratulations. Holy crap. Get your crit together. Heroic Gul'dan. Ahead of the curve achievement.
I'm so excited because we finished third overall in AIE in all of the co-guilds and everything else for people getting their heroic kills. And I'm so excited because we literally started playing together as a team in January. So the fact that we were even able to pull this out is amazing. And the fact that we did it ahead of teams who have been raiding together for years, I'm just like, suck it. Yeah, so good.
It was awesome. I almost didn't show up because of my own personal anxiety with feeling like I hadn't earned it because I hadn't been there for all of your progression through heroic.
Dude, your DPS was fine.
I appreciate it. I very much appreciate it. I made up for it by not rolling on any loot last night and and trying to still feel good about it at the end. It was awesome. I appreciate being allowed to come along. And man, that felt good. That felt real good. That was that's a feeling I haven't had in WoW in many years, not since really Lich King. Even the normal Gul'dan kill, since it was your all second kill, I had missed the first one. It was cool, but like it's whatever. Like everyone wasn't losing their minds except me, so I would just muted my mic. Was like, woo, yeah. But last night, got to get in on it. Got to be there when everyone, started losing their collective shite together. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was really funny because I think we ended up with something in and around the area of 25 to 30 attempts. I don't really know 100% how many we did, but we had 17 attempts going into last night. And I really didn't think that we were going to get him down because it's a Sunday. We tend to have lower attendance on Sundays. But then, like, everyone was just like, no, we have to kill him. So a lot of people showed up. It's great because one of the things Nighthold really punishes, we found, was small group sizes. And the thing that kept killing us most of the time was that
soul stacking.
Black Harvest and the souls in the third phase, and we just didn't have enough people to soak it. So it was just wiping it. We had so many sub 10% wipes. It was ridiculous because we get to, basically the second big AoE Black Harvest cast, and then just everyone would die. And so it was really frustrating as a healer because you're just watching all this damage go out and you're like, no, cooldowns, no, 5%. So yeah, it was really, really frustrating. So when he finally died, I wasn't even watching the boss's health bar. We had one of our warlocks was standing soaking, like, I think he had like 10 souls by the end of it. He was just soaking everything. And I was like, all the heals. Oh God, don't die. And then, we ended up taking him down. And I was just like, thank God I'm never doing this fight again.
Yeah.
Except that we have to farm him for gear. So
I feel like I got Flames of Sargeras like right near the end. And it made me lose track of like how close we were on the fight. And like I came out of that Flames of Sargeras, I got real low too, like 20% or something, popped every cooldown I had. My Hellstone was already had been used. I'm like, I'm going to die. I didn't because you healers are awesome. And then I come back over to Gul'dan and he's at like 1%. And I'm just like, holy shit, we got this. And just I popped everything and it, I would say burned him down, but froze him down because I'm a Frost Death Knight. So
yeah,
it
was so funny because like I kept hearing Civ and he just kept calling like, just burn the boss, blow everything, burn the boss, and I'm like, but there's no way he's that low, Civ. You're overreacting. And then all of a sudden it was like, cha-ching, achievement, and I was like, oh, Civ was telling the truth.
Yep.
I should just trust my raid leader.
Get wrecked.
Yeah, so it was a really great experience. It was really fun. Like I said, we ended up third overall in AIE, and we lost out coming second in the guild by literally a matter of hours. We were partway through our very like technical issue ridden raid. For some reason, we were having crazy latency. We were having people not able to phase in properly. People having to restart routers and everything else. Like, it was just a mess of a raid night. So I was like, there's no way we're getting this down. And then, of course, like probably half an hour after we started, Civ was like, oh man, this other raid group got Gul'dan down. I was like, no.
Yeah,
and, like, we see all the achievements popping in guild chat. We're like, damn it.
Yeah, they earned it though. I think even without our disconnection issues, we took 7 attempts last night, I think.
I think so, yeah. So I think we ended up about 25 tries to get down Heroic Gul'dan. And I think part of those were just, it had been so long since we'd seen the Gul'dan fight, because we had been farming the first few heroic bosses for a few weeks, and then, like working on progression. So we'd been very much focusing on, 1 or 2 bosses per night, making our way up to Gul'dan. And then when we one-shot Elisand, I think we got a little cocky. So there was some relearning the fight, and there was some like, oh yeah, we actually do have to do the mechanics and dodge this stuff and everything else. So, he was a punishing boss, but we did really, really well overall. I'm so proud of the team. And all of that to say, hey guys, we're recruiting for Tomb of Sargeras. So if you have a Horde character in AIE, or you're willing to server transfer and get into our guild, then please do hit me up. There is a link in our show notes and on the AIE forums that basically will give you all the information of who and what we're looking for. But we raid on Tuesdays and Sundays, 10:30 until 12:30 Eastern.
Yep. And congrats again, everyone. Get your crit together. Kicking ass.
Yeah, we're doing, oh man, I love our raid team so much. We're pretty freaking awesome. So thank you guys so much for joining the team, for sticking it out with us. We've had a really great run over the last few months, and I'm really looking forward to Tomb. So
there's only been 2 points in my life where I haven't had somebody I hated in my raid team, and this is the second. So
I'm glad you don't hate any of us, Garrett.
I mean, I wouldn't admit it otherwise.
That's true.
But I mean that. I've been on a lot of raid teams. There's always that one person where I'm like, why are we bringing them? They're awful.
Well, and I think like that's one of the great things about Get Your Crit Together is everyone is like really nice and helpful and wants to progress, and so is also very progression minded. So everyone's like, it's very much like we have conversations all the time being like, okay, this is like your spec, and this is the thing that I know because I play that character too on one of my alts, and like there's a lot of conversation about like how to tweak rotations and like how to bring numbers up, and nobody gets offended, which is really, really nice. So it's just this like progression minded serious team that I think would probably even consider going into Mythic if there wasn't the numbers restriction. So we're a really great team, and we would love to have you. So if you think that sounds like something that you would like to do, we do have pretty strict requirements because we are looking at blowing through normal Tomb and working on heroic pretty quickly, since most of us are heroic geared. So if that sounds like you and you're looking for a new place to run some heroic or something, then please do hit us up. So there's a post on the forums, or you can talk to one of our raid leaders. So that would be myself, Civ, or Matt, who plays on Talia. So just hit us up.
Awesome. What else is happening in WoW that you're excited about, Jocelyn?
So this is something so I'm super excited about the thing, but not necessarily the reward. So I'm sure you guys have probably seen a couple of people riding around on these like really weird kind of like, looks like it came from the bottom of the ocean, like wormy, eely kind of thing. Yeah, so that's the Mind Seeker mount, and I'm not 100% sure if that's actually what the mount is called. I really don't have any interest in actually getting it because I think the mount looks really weird, and so I would never use it. But the way that you get it, I think, is so freaking cool. So basically, there's clues to the location of the mount hidden throughout World of Warcraft, and the clues are inspired by the cosmology chart in Chronicle Volume 1. So you have to basically go around and read pages, and then it gives you more information about where the next clue is going to be, and you have to click them in order. And the page number order is actually like the ISBN number of Chronicle Volume 1. So there's like all these like little interconnected clues and stuff, and it was solved about 3 weeks ago. There's actually a Discord of basically like secret finders in World of Warcraft, and so they solved it a few weeks ago, and so you can see some people kind of riding around on it. But this whole like inside the game, outside the game riddle thing, I think is so freaking cool, and I want them to do more of this, especially since they're publishing these big Chronicle books. I think it's really neat that they're like hiding little secrets and clues inside of them. What's that called? There's a word for that. They did it with like Westworld and stuff too.
Oh,
and the Sombra stuff with Overwatch.
Oh, well, Sombra was an ARG.
ARG, that's it. I knew there was a word for it, or an acronym, or a saying, or whatever. Yeah.
No, it's I think it's super rad. Also, I think the mount is rad. I think it's a very cool looking mount, but I like super ugly monsters. So,
well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's very much. And the thing is, right now, I feel like I have a rotation of like 7 to 10 mounts already that I absolutely love. So, I mean, I've got obviously the mount from Nighthold. I've got the mount from killing Archimonde the Moose mount from last expansion. I've got the Frostworm thing from the Glory of the Ice Crown Raider, I think. I'm trying to remember. Oh, the Blue Drake. I'm trying to remember all the ones I kind of like cycle through. And then, on my Paladin, I have the Diablo one, the Tyrael's Charger, with the horse with the wings.
It's a fantastic Paladin mount.
Yeah,
awful
so I use that all the time on my Paladin, but
yeah, that's all my favorites on my Pally as well.
So yeah, I just feel like I don't know. I guess technically I don't really have a big ugly monster that I ride. All my mounts tend to be more of the pretty variety. Oh, I also have the enchanted fairy dragon thing. So I tend to lean towards the prettier mounts and not so much the giant monsters. But if that kind of style of mount is your thing, then you should check this out, because I think it's pretty freaking cool.
I have one of the Grondling mounts from Draenor that a friend actually just sent me, just being nice, and oh my god, I love that thing. It's just ridiculous. and Core Hounds are a particular favorite of mine. I like big, hulky, scary-looking monster mounts. I also have an affinity for pretty mounts because I play mostly elves. So
yeah.
I think my favorite ground mount is the Shadow Pan Tiger. That's what I spend most of my time riding around on.
I don't think I have that one.
You have to get exalted with the Shadow Pan, and you know me, I hate rep grinds, but I liked that mount so much, I went for it. So,
I am so impressed.
I ride around on that thing a lot.
I'm surprised you don't ride your Fox more often, especially when you're around me. I still don't have my Fox invitation thing, by the way.
in the defense of me being a jerk, I did ride it for like 3 months straight every time I was around you.
Yes. It did those little figure eights. Yep. I remember.
Yep. You don't have to do them either. You just stand still and hit spacebar, and he darts around. It's adorable.
Oh, I know.
It's absolutely adorable. Oh. Now this is super rad. I hope they do more stuff like this. Maybe there's something in Chronicle Volume 2. Who knows? Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. But whatever the case, it is time to get to the meat of today's show, our lore discussion for today. And I'm not going to pitch to you, Jocelyn, because it's my week. Ha 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 ha! It is time to talk about the Death Knight Order Hall campaign. And I am jazzed.
Yeah, I texted Garrett this morning, and I was like, so how do you feel about doing the DK campaign this week? And he was just like, F yeah! It's like, okay.
Was that my actual... I'm actually going back. I don't remember exactly how I responded. But, oh, yeah, that's exactly how... Yep, quote. Yep. F yeah, only I didn't say F.
Yeah. There were 3 other letters that accompanied that.
There were. So, whatever the case is, we are going to discuss the Death Knight Order Hall campaign. So, if for whatever reason you're worried about spoilers about the DK campaign, run away now! Run away, little girl. Run away. But, yeah, I have been very, very audible about my love for the Death Knight Order Hall campaign. We're not going to talk so much about the weapons. I would argue that 2 of the 3 of them are pretty uninteresting in how you get them. The interesting one is playing as a Frost Death Knight, because you actually go to Icecrown and collect shards of Frostmourne and reforge blades out of it, which is awesome.
That is very, very cool.
And we'll talk a little bit about the Arthas Easter eggs within those particular weapons at the very end of our bit here. But the main meat of the Order Hall campaign for Death Knights is creating or bringing back, but with new characters, the Four Horsemen. And I think we need to kick this off. Actually, we're going to do 2 lore segments here. I think we can't really start talking about the Four Horsemen without explaining the original Four Horsemen, of which there were actually 5, which we'll explain now. So, if you're unfamiliar with them, the original Four Horsemen were elite Death Knights created by Kel'Thuzad himself. They were basically his personal guards in Naxxramas, and they're referred to multiple places as the most powerful Death Knights in Naxxramas. And
so in Nax, not like in the world.
Not
so
in the
is
world.
This like, was this Naxxramas like original Naxxramas before the Lich King and before Death Knights were a playable class and all that kind of stuff?
Both.
Were they like...
Okay. The Four Horsemen show up in both incarnations of Naxxramas. If you started playing, hell, even in Burning Crusade, Naxxramas originally showed up as one of the final raids in Vanilla, and actually Blizzard came out and said, "Hey, not a lot of people saw this. It was really hard. We probably won't make stuff that hard again because a lot of work went into this, and a very small portion of the player base actually got to see the content." And so Naxxramas was also brought back again in Wrath of the Lich King. And I don't remember anyone complaining, probably because there was maybe 100 some odd people that actually saw it. That's probably lower than reality, but still. Nobody I knew was complaining because it was new content to all of us. And some things were different, but for the most part, it was the same raid. But whatever the case is, the original Four Horsemen were a boss encounter in the original Naxxramas, and also the follow-up, the rebirth, I don't know what you call it, the return of Naxxramas in Wrath of the Lich King. And they're 4 mostly fallen paladins. And actually, not a ton is known about a majority of the Four Horsemen. A lot of it is just assumptions or like 1 or 2 throwaway sentences explaining who they were. So you had Thane Korthaz, who was a former dwarf paladin and actually fought alongside Uther at one point before he was, killed and then brought back and his soul enslaved by Kel'Thuzad. Then you had, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly because I'm not sure it's ever actually said audibly, but Lady Blemio is how I've always said it.
That was actually not too bad.
Yeah. Which basically, as far as I could tell, and I dug, really nothing is known about her. She's assumed to be a former Silverhand Paladin as well, because pretty much all of the Four Horsemen are former Paladins.
Well, that was true of a lot of the Death Knights early on, right? Because basically Arthas just went along and absolutely slaughtered every paladin he saw. I think probably because he hated a little bit of himself for ever being a paladin, right? So yes. I think he just slaughtered the paladins and then said, "Serve me!"
Well, they were also one of the main forces that tried to stop Arthas and the Scourge. So they were on the front lines clashing against the Scourge, so they were among the many to fall against them. I'm sure if a large group of hunters just decided we're going to go fight the Scourge, many Death Knights would have ended up being bow-wielding hunters. But I think it just happened to be the Paladins were... they picked the wrong patch of real estate to set up shop, really is what it all boils down to. Then we have Sir Zelik, and again, don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. These are names that I said inside my own head during a raid for many months. Yet another fallen paladin. We do actually know a decent amount about Zelik, though, and he's a wicked, tragic figure. He was so strong in his faith that he continued to wield the light even after being resurrected by Kel'Thuzad. And he also, his mind is still his own. His own kind of will hasn't been corrupted by Kel'Thuzad, even though his soul is. So as you fight him in the raid, he apologizes profusely for attacking you. And his wiki article even brings up that like it's very tragic because he can't control his own actions. So he murdered paladins while knowing full well what he was doing, but not being able to stop himself. So very much
very similar to Sylvanas in that, she was basically watching her body do these things and just couldn't control her own actions but was forced to watch.
Yes. Actually, I didn't even think about that. Way to call back to an earlier lore segment. And their original leader was Alexandros Mograine, and this will be our first big meaty lore discussion so far, who, if you are unfamiliar with, was the original wielder of the Ashbringer, which if you're a paladin, you're going, hey, I know that sword.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking, is I was just like, oh man, this is so cool, because I don't know a lot about the Ashbringer pre, Tyrion. It was just, Tyrion's got the Ashbringer. That's his sword. It's what he does.
Yeah. You should actually totally pick up and read through the Ashbringer comic, because although I'm about to spoil it for you, FYI, a lot of it is about to be spoiled because that's where most of this lore comes from. Alexandros was a paladin, wielded uncorrupted Ashbringer. It is since uncorrupted again, but there was a long stint, which we're about to talk about, where it was a corrupted blade. He ended up being murdered by his own son, his oldest son, Renault, who was led astray by the Scarlet Crusade, whom, if you remember, were being led by a dreadlord taking human form.
I feel like because I think it was touched upon, again, we're pulling a lot from both WoW Wiki and also from Nobel's videos, and I feel like, didn't he said the name of the dreadlord, and I feel like it was a dreadlord that we knew. Like, it was a name that I recognized. And so I feel bad that now I don't remember the name and I don't remember where I knew it from, but I feel like we've covered him in a lore episode so far, which makes me think that possibly he was involved with Sylvanas somehow. I feel like he was one of those three that Sylvanas ended up killing.
So, of course, I didn't make note of this because there was so much to cover. I felt we could skip over it, but now you're making me...
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have sidelined the conversation.
Now you're making me go and look it up.
I feel like it might have been like Balnazar or something like that.
Yes. Yes, it was Balnazar. You are correct. So there you go. Balnazar was the one...
I win the lore prize.
Covertly leading the Scarlet Crusade. Unbeknownst to the Scarlet Crusade. They didn't actually know he was Dreadlord at the time. He had another son, though, by the name of Darian. And if you're a Death Knight, you're probably familiar with Mr. Darian Mograine. He also comes in the fold here, as he ended up joining the Order of the Argent Dawn. And it was there that he joined the assault against Naxxramas. He actually ended up losing all of his men to the Four Horsemen, but Darian himself survived and actually came to possess the corrupted Ashbringer, which his father Alexandros Mograine, he had, after his death, at the hands of Renault, he was resurrected by Kel'Thuzad and forced to serve as the leader of the Four Horsemen. He was slain. Darian got the corrupted Ashbringer, and turns out corrupted Ashbringer, much like Frostmourne, had a voice. The blade had a voice, and it led Darian to the Scarlet Monastery. And he didn't actually know about his older brother's basically transgressions against his father, killing his
role
own...
in his father's death.
Exactly. Didn't know that was a thing. And Renault attacked Darian, but when that happened, Alexandros' spirit actually emerged from the blade of the corrupted Ashbringer and decapitated Renault, just took his head off, and then forgave his son, though. Cuts his head off and then forgives him.
So, can you really call that, like, forgiving him? Like, I'm going to murder you right in your face. It's okay, though. I'm totally not mad anymore.
I mean, just Death Knight things, Jocelyn. Just Death Knight
guess
things.
So. Yeah.
Later on, Darian ends up killing himself with the corrupted Ashbringer. He runs it through his own chest to end the first battle for Light's Hope, and also to free his father's soul from the blade. Kel'Thuzad ends up being the only Scourge left standing. There was an entire Scourge army, descending upon Light's Hope, and they're all obliterated when Darian takes his own life. And in that very moment, right then and there, Kel'Thuzad takes Darian into his service, and Darian still wields corrupted Ashbringer, which he draws from his own chest, Jocelyn.
Just Death Knight things.
Just Death Knight things, yes. Yes. If you're not realizing why I like Death Knights so much, it's because they are metal as F.
They have a lot of class flavor. I will give them that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In Wrath of the Lich King, the Four Horsemen end up returning with 3 of the original members. The only thing that has changed is their leader is now Baron Rivendare.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused then. So Darian is serving Kel'Thuzad, but not as the leader then of the Four Horsemen. He just is in his service, and like, why would KT choose Baron Rivendare over Darian, who would, in my mind, be like the natural successor as the leader of the Four Horsemen?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I do not know. Feel free to enlighten me, fine listeners out there. I'm actually a bit fuzzy on the in-between between Darian's resurrection and his role to play in the Knights of the Even Blade.
Well, that would kind of be very much like a jump from like vanilla stuff that did you actually play back in vanilla, or did you start in Burning Crusade? I can't remember.
No, I started in vanilla, but I was awful at the game and only reached level 40 before Burning Crusade released.
Okay, so, but yeah, not end game rating, none of that kind of stuff.
So, none of that.
So yeah, I can see why you would be very fuzzy on how Nax ended up in Northrend and everything that kind of happened in between when you didn't even see it when you were playing through.
Right. And like I said, I went back and tried to dig up as much as I could about the story of the Four Horsemen, and there's just not a lot there. They were just the story. These are characters that they're original to World of Warcraft. They don't have a tie to Warcraft 3 any more than they're tied to Kel'Thuzad. And there's a gravitas to them if you rated at the time, because it was a very difficult boss fight. You had to fight 4 bosses simultaneously, and they could not be near each other. You had to pull them to 4 corners of the room, which meant very creative tanking. There were also mechanics that allowed non-tanks to basically tank some of the horsemen, but it was a very difficult fight. Also, back in vanilla, there was no Arthas presence. They had the Plague Lands, and there were, hints to Arthas, but he was not there and present. So when Naxxramas came and you're actually fighting Death Knights, if you're a Warcraft 3 fan, you're losing your mind. It's super awesome.
I feel like just Warcraft in general, as much as people look back fondly on vanilla, I think it was more from a possibly mechanical standpoint. I think there were a lot of really cool quests and stuff, but I really think that stories in World of Warcraft kind of started to evolve as they started doing like novels and things outside of the game to kind of expand the universe. I think that vanilla is very much focused on, like getting the game out, getting the mechanics down, like let's do this. And so we have a whole lot more story now in something like Legion than we did in something like vanilla. In vanilla, it was just like, this is the boss, this is its name, it's a corrupted paladin, go.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was kind of like enough for the time. But yeah, I think the story of the Four Horsemen is just kind of a artifact of that kind of time in the world of Warcraft.
Yeah, no. It's there's just enough there to be interesting, except when it comes to the Mograines. The Mograines story of the entire family is very much fleshed out in the Ashbringer comic series. But then Darian just kind of disappears until Wrath of the Lich King. Basically he's just an agent of the Lich King and kind of becomes one of the prized, it seems like prized leaders, prized Death Knights of Arthas himself, because he puts him in charge of Acheris, which when you start a Death Knight, you're evil. You're playing a bad guy. You're not yet. The Knights of the Even Blade have not been founded yet. It's because of the events of the I guess it's the second battle for Light's Hope Chapel that the Even Blade emerge and Darian splinters from the Lich King. Mm-hmm. But it's super interesting. Go check that out. I'm not going to go too deep into that because we have enough to talk about.
But, we have enough to talk about. That's for sure.
yes. Whatever the case is, after the events of Wrath of the Lich King, the Four Horsemen all fall. They're all dead. Baron Rivendare has now died twice, or 3 times, because I guess he was resurrected at some point. Not to mention the other 3 who had previously been killed in vanilla but came back. Alexandros is gone for good, and Darian is now fighting against the Lich King. So now here we are in Legion. We, as Death Knights, are working with the Lich King, with Bolvar Lich King now.
That was one thing I found quite confusing as I was going through the notes, and I was like, the Lich King. Okay, wait, now I need to talk about Arthas. So now I'm going to say Arthas the Lich King, and then now Bolvar the Lich King.
Yes.
Because it does get a little bit confusing at some points.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's the same character because of the Helm of Domination. Yes. But in other ways, it's not, because Arthas still retained a portion of himself in when he was the Lich King. But
right, and we're not quite sure when. So you basically start the Death Knight Order Hall campaign, and you're contacted by the Lich King, and we don't really know how much of Bolvar is still there, how much of himself was burned away through, the fires of the Red Dragonflight at the Wrathgate and the torture that he endured under Arthas. And, we're not really 100% sure who's kind of under the helm and how much of the Paladin and the good is left in Bolvar. So you're contacted by Bolvar, who is the Lich King now, and with the return of the Burning Legion, he tells you essentially to resurrect the 4 horsemen. Not the same 4 horsemen. He has a different set of 4 people in mind to kind of take up their helms, because he says the war will have a price that the living cannot pay. And that's basically all he tells you. He says, bring back my greatest champions, and just because I said so.
Yeah, more or less. And there's a lot of hand waving, and the Even Blade don't trust the Lich King. Darian Mograine especially. He's every time you, as the new leader, essentially, go to carry out go along the course of resurrecting 4 new horsemen, pretty much every time you go back to Darian, he's just like, you want to resurrect who? This is going to piss everyone off. Everyone. Nobody's okay with this.
Yeah. And it's funny because he basically at the very beginning hands over the reins of the Ebon Blade to you and says, you are now Death Lord. I will follow your lead. You are, our leader, which it's funny because through the other campaigns that I have, that I've played through, they do that sort of in a way, but at the same time, you have to almost earn your order's trust, and it takes you a very long time to get the title of High Lord as a paladin or Archmage as a mage. You very much kind of start at the bottom where they're like, okay, you've done a lot of great things. We trust you. We're going to let you command our troops in the field, which is why you get mission boards and stuff. But you very much have to kind of work your way up to the top. Whereas here, they're like, you know what? You're Death Lord. We're just going to follow you and do whatever you say. And okay, we really don't agree with any of this, but I guess since you're saying it, we'll do it. It's a very weird kind of dynamic within the Death Knight Order compared to kind of the council you belong to in many of the other orders.
I don't think the crimes you're committing against both the Alliance and the Horde while resurrecting the 4 horsemen would make any sense unless you were leading the Even Blade.
That's true. That's very true. Because you mentioned crimes against the Alliance and the Horde. The very first person that you go to resurrect is actually a great champion of the Horde. And I can see how everyone in the surviving Horde post the reign of Garrosh would be very upset with the resurrection of this character, although he is a great champion. It's General Nazgrim, who you guys probably remember. He's been basically part of the campaign of World of Warcraft all the way through from vanilla through to Mists of Pandaria. And he is fiercely loyal to the Horde and worked his way up from basically a grunt, basically nothing within the Horde, all the way up to General under War Chief Garrosh. And he was put in charge of the force sent to claim Pandaria and battle the Alliance there, alongside the adventurers of the Horde, whom he previously spent time fighting beside in Cataclysm down underneath the ocean in Vazhir? Okay. It's another one of these weird things with a whole bunch of letters that don't look like they belong together. Thank you very much, Blizzard.
Well, Lady Vaj, and then just add ear to the end. Vazhir.
Ear. Okay. So the general's tasked with putting down the Darkspear Rebellion, which is led by Vol'jin and culminates in the Siege of Orgrimmar. So he's basically so loyal to the Horde that he's unable to betray War Chief Garrosh, whether he agrees or not, which they tend to actually disagree quite a lot through the course of Pandaria, including there's a confrontation between Garrosh and Lothamar, who is the leader of the Blood Elves, because basically Garrosh is like, I don't care about lives that aren't orcs, so basically did the same thing to the Blood Elves that the humans did way, way, way back in the First War. So Lothamir obviously gets very upset, and so then Nazgrim kind of plays almost like peacekeeper and then tells off Garrosh, very much speaking his mind, but in the end refuses to full on betray his war chief. So he ends up being slain during the during the siege of Orgrimmar and while defending both the capital and his war chief. So you raise General Nazgrim, and he's actually kind of okay with it. You go to Durotar in his grave, raise him up, and then tell him the Burning Legion is back, and he's like, all right, give me my axe. Let's do this. Yeah, he's very much on board with just being a Death Knight and kicking some ass.
Nazgrim's a badass. In life, he was very much an orc of duty, and he is so much in death as well. As soon as he knows the threat at hand, he's just, it's like you said, give me my axe. Let's get to work.
Yep.
But again, this is an orc who, even because he stood by Garrosh's side, he did it for the right reasons. He did it for honorable reasons. So even though he had to die during the Siege of Orgrimmar, he still held with a good memory. He died an honorable death, and still has a good memory among the Horde. So to resurrect him, to basically desecrate his corpse,
mm-hmm.
No one's really down. No one's really on board with it. This is the first time where, like, as I'm going through the quests, and I actually took the time to read quest logs, which I never do. Darian's just like, oh man, I don't know if this is a good idea. I really enjoyed that. But on to the next horseman, Thoris Trollbane, whom I was completely unfamiliar with going into Legion. And I have now left Legion, even though I'm still in the middle of it. Really digging this character. He was the former king of Stromgarde in the Arathi Highlands. If you've been playing since vanilla, it's been there. You can go and visit it. It is a crap hole. It's ruins. But it used to be a great one of the great human kingdoms. Thoris himself is noted as the largest and the strongest of all the human kings during his time. The kingdom of Stromgarde were in the heart of troll territory, so they were in constant battle basically their entire lives, and as a result, Thoris just grew into an impeccable warrior. He was also a close childhood friend of King Taranis Menethil, which Arthas connection is Arthas' daddy, so that's kind of an important thing to note there. He fought in the second war. And then also a cool thing to note here is that Tol Barad, which if you played that was Cataclysm, right?
That was Cata, yeah.
Was the not nearly as cool as Wintergrass PvP zone, but still had some cool things in its own right. That used to be territory of Stromgarde. It was actually a Stromgarde citadel, which was lost during the Second War, and in fact, much of the Stromgarde kingdom fell to the Horde the same way as Tol Barad. So at the end of the Second War, Stromgarde's kingdom is much smaller than it previously was. Thoris and Stromgarde seceded from the Alliance alongside Gulneas after the fallout of the Second War. Thoris disagreed very strongly with his friend Taranis about keeping the orcs alive and also in internment camps, because it gets a little political here, but taxes went up after the Second War, and kingdoms like Stromgarde struggled as a result. And on top of that, running these internment camps were very pricey, so their funds were just being stretched too thin. Not to mention, Thoris was pretty mad at the Horde for destroying his kingdom, so he just wanted to kill them to save money and also for revenge. Mm-hmm. This also what?
I was just going to say, this is actually, I really kind of, I don't know why, but I like the politics that they kind of created in this kind of point of time in Warcraft lore, and especially around the Arathi Highlands and everything else. And there's, parts of these kingdoms that get infiltrated by the Black Dragonflight, and there's all kinds of political intrigue within the humans at this point in time. So I find all of this so cool and so interesting that I really, and if you guys don't know a lot about this kind of section of Azeroth's history, I really encourage you to go look into it, because it's really, really cool. And they've put a lot of thought into exactly how the kind of first alliance fell and the new alliance rose. So I think that there's really a lot of meaty story there that doesn't get told a lot. So you guys, if politics is the kind of thing that interests you, there's quite a lot of councils and disagreements and kind of like high ground and who's got the moral high ground and, you know, what's going on with the decision about what they should do with the orcs after they win the war. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, they do.
Or maybe I'm just a giant nerd.
No, I enjoy it too. As long as it doesn't become the Star Wars prequels in regards to politics, it's fine. If you can keep it more Game of Thrones politics and less.
I kind of liked the Star Wars prequels.
I do too. I'm an apologist, but I will be the first to admit that is not its strongest portion. And if you really want to get me off topic, thank you, Jocelyn. I would argue that the Clone Wars, the animated series, actually took that and did a lot more interesting things with it than the actual films themselves did.
Fair enough. I can get on board with that.
All right, cool.
Back to Warcraft.
Back to Warcraft, where politics are cool because it's violent and there's monsters. Thoris is one of the few human characters that has a severe bloodlust towards orcs that I wouldn't go as far as say as I agree with him, but I sympathize with this character. There are many racist human characters in the early Warcraft lore, like Jaina's father, who were just off their rocker essentially with bloodlust against orcs and the Horde. But Thoris, you know, his backstory is in such a way that I at least understand how he arrived at his beliefs. You know, growing up fighting trolls his entire life and then losing the majority of his kingdom to orcs. Like, I can at least sympathize with where he ended up mentally. But anyways, this also is all part of the First Alliance falling apart, which is a big historical moment where both Stromgarde and Gilneas secede, and Gilnea builds a giant wall and just hides behind it for a while.
And then gets cursed and
Pretty much. But back to Thoris. He is eventually betrayed and murdered by his own son, Galen, who obviously takes up the crown thereafter. But then when we go to resurrect Thoris, we actually deal with Galen again, who is now a defected Forsaken ruling the ruins of Stromgarde, and I am not going to get into that entire story. Go look it up yourself if you want to know that in between, because it would take too long. But he died and then was brought back as a Forsaken and then defected and then took over the ruins of Stromgarde. And we actually deal with him, and this is where we learn that he was the one that murdered Thoris. Because he bars us from getting to Thoris's remains. So the Even Blade, the Death Lord, uses the player, kill Galen, and then resurrect Thoris, and he's like, oh yeah, I totally knew it was him. So Thoris is also pretty much on board. It doesn't take a lot of convincing to get Thoris to come and join the cause. Seems to be, you know, pretty jazzed that he killed his traitorous son again, because he was Forsaken, which means he died one time before.
He died already, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of sons killing dads and dads getting their revenge in some way or another with the four horsemen. So,
very, very much so. So then we move on to our third horseman, who is High Inquisitor Whitemane. So she is famously the final boss of the Scarlet Monastery in vanilla World of Warcraft. And as a child, watched her family turned to the Scourge and then had to slay them herself, which, as a child, man, that's gotta be scarring.
Yeah, I could see how going through that would make you fall in with a zealot cult.
Exactly. So basically, she came to lead the Scarlet Crusade, which I think we've kind of touched on the Scarlet Crusade a little bit. But basically, they were just trying to purge the land of any undead. They were very, like Garrett said, culty. And she was therefore responsible for the torture and deaths of many innocent men and women in the name of the Crusade.
Yeah, to truly, like, I think to frame it correctly, the Scarlet Crusade basically see anyone other than their own Crusaders as plagued. So they will capture and torture any other man or woman they find.
Even humans, yeah. They're like the epitome of crazy cult race. Can you even call them racist? Maybe plagueist? I don't know, but
they're batshit is the best term I can come up with for the Scarlet Crusade.
Fair enough. So she's defeated in the Scarlet Monastery, but then returns during the events of Mist of Pandaria, having survived the first raid on the monastery thanks to her ability to resurrect as a priest, which finally, this makes sense. All these things that we kill, and we're standing there like half the raid has the ability to res things. Like, oh no, Tyrion's dead. Can't I just res him?
It is worth noting that she is such a powerful priest that she's able to essentially cheat death on her own.
Yes, that is true. But yeah, so she comes back, and Lillian Voss, who we are not going to get into now, but she has a very cool, very interesting story, and will probably be the subject of her own lore segment on For Azeroth sometime in the future. She, alongside the Horde and Alliance heroes, raid the monastery again and permanently end Whitemane's crusade. And they do this by thrusting the blades of the Anointed into her body. So they basically kill her for good, or so they thought. Kill her at least to the point that she can't res herself.
Yes. And then Even Blade show up with the Death Lord, res her, and I, Garrett, who spent many, many, many hours in Scarlet Monastery
trying to kill her.
freak out. I was very excited that Whitemane was going to be one of our new horsemen.
Yeah, and so part of the, I guess, the thrusting the blades of the Anointed, almost like, or it wasn't necessarily the blades as much as it was just the fact that she was kind of permanently dead. Darian basically says, the part of death is kind of quelling the mind, and so he hopes that when you res her, she won't still be batshit crazy. And it turns out, nope, she's kind of mellowed out a little bit. Her time in the grave has done her well, and she is ready to assist against the Burning Legion.
Yeah, dying gives you a certain perspective.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Also, fun little Easter egg on Sally Whitemane. If you go into the Caverns of Time, have you done the old Hillsbrad instance?
I think so. Yeah, I have. I definitely have.
Next time you're there, go to South Shore. She's one of the little children running around playing.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, they are so good at just tying characters together and making sure that they're in all the places they need to be.
Yeah.
Props to the lore guys at Blizzard.
Yeah, really cool little.
That's some serious research. Yeah.
Cool little inclusion there in that 5-man. And then finally, who we thought was going to be the fourth horseman, Tyrion Fordring, and at the kind of the crescendo of the Death Knight campaign, you go and raid Light's Hope, and by extension, the Paladin class Order Hall. And Jocelyn, this is where I feel my mistake of how I started Legion ended up being the coolest experience for me, and I feel like me alone, because although I'm sure someone else did a similar thing that I did. So when Legion started, I was on my Paladin. This has been my main since basically Ulduar, this Paladin. I cleared Ulduar with this guy, TOC. ICC, this is where I got the Kingslayer title, which is my favorite title, and I use on all of my heroes because I got it when the content was still current, and Downing Arthas was a big thing for me. And I played through as a Paladin, did the campaign order hall as far as I could without finishing all the oh my god, why am I blanking? What's the end level area in Legion?
Suramar?
Suramar, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Without getting too many.
I'm frantically thinking through my Paladin campaign, and I'm like, what does he mean when we go talk to the priest? Like, what's he going?
Yeah, I went pretty much as far as I could without, getting into the rep grind of Suramar, basically,
yeah.
and realized I just wasn't digging playing Ret all that much, and it didn't look like I was going to tank anytime soon. So I decided I'm going to finally put my money where my mouth is and switch to a Death Knight. And this was so freaking cool because I had leveled all the way through, seen a ton of the Paladin class Order Hall, which I love and think is great, and also was there for Tyrion's funeral, essentially.
Yep.
And then I come in as a Death Knight and raid this place to try and secure the corpse of Tyrion Fordring. And I also end up having to fight Lady Liadrin, who, as a Blood Knight fanboy, I'm also freaking out because I'm there as a Death Knight whacking on one of my favorite leaders. So this was just the ultimate fan fiction. I couldn't have written this better myself for me if I was trying to come up with the coolest thing I would ever want to do in World of Warcraft. This is pretty much up there. Raiding Light's Hope Chapel, fighting Lady Liadrin for control of the corpse of a fallen Paladin hero. So that's what happens.
It's very, very well written. And until I found out essentially how the Death Knight Order Hall class campaign essentially ends, I loved the Paladin Order Hall campaign. But now, because we actually got to interact with the priests, right? Well, it turns out we played a huge role as well in the end of the Death Knight campaign, and I would have loved to have this kind of woven into my Paladin campaign somehow, because there's, as far as I remember, we don't do anything, and there's no mention of a raid by the Death Knights. So it would have been really cool if at some point you got called back, or, you know, somehow you were, you know, sent back to Light's Hope Chapel because, oh my God, the Death Knights are attacking. You need to help defend. And I know, like, we couldn't have any sort of like a PvP kind of instance or anything like that, but you very much could have like attempted to help Lady Liadrin defend. And I think that would have been really, really cool, because I mean, so basically in the end, you have the light itself thwarts your Death Lord's attempts to raise Tyrion. So, I mean, but even then you could have had yourself like stunned by the Death Knights or something. Like, they do that all the time, where they put the little swirly over top of your head and you can't move. Like, that's a thing that happens in World of Warcraft all the time. So yeah, I would have liked to see that happen, and then that would almost like reinforce my faith in the light. And I think that could have been a really cool kind of beat in the Paladin Order Hall campaign. That being said, the Paladin Order Hall campaign, which we haven't touched on yet, is fantastic. And I think if you'd added even more to it, it would have like thrown it out of kind of oh, what am I looking for?
Proportion?
Out of like, what?
Out of proportion, or
yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Are you saying that it would be disproportionately awesome compared to the other Class Hall experiences?
That is what I'm trying to say, because well, all of the Class Hall, and what we've kind of noticed so far going through them, all of the Class Hall campaigns basically follow a very simple formula, and it's like, get your artifact, start to do a thing, send some champions on some missions, get your extra dudes that can go on your missions. Then you have to go through and, you know, send dudes off to do stuff, and then you have to do some big, huge thing at the end that ties everything together, and then you're done. So it's a very simple formula, and I feel like if you had, as a paladin, a big thing that was, you know, like, the Death Knights are attacking, you have to go into an instance in your order hall, and then, oh, you have to go help the priest, and you have to go do this thing. Like, it would have been disproportionate to the campaigns. So I can see why they didn't do it, but it would have been really cool, because this is huge. Having your order hall attacked by another faction, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm with your original point. I don't care what it does in terms of how cool it is versus another class hall. I think if a class hall interacts with another class hall, it should be reconciled. Yeah, exactly. It should be reconciled on both sides of the player experience, I think. Yeah. Granted, in my very personal experience, it wasn't ruined for me. So when I was playing through as a Death Knight, it was a huge surprise, and I was just freaking out. I was giddy with excitement. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as you say, anyway, so you face up against Lady Liadrin, and the light itself intervenes, and you are not able to resurrect Tyrion into your service. And Darion once again sacrifices himself. He dies so that you and the other Knights of the Even Blade can escape. And afterwards, you resurrect Darion. The Lich King speaks to you, and you realize that this was really basically a test for Darion himself. And Darion is once again resurrected as the Death Knight, only this time as the leader of the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. Which was, I mean, it was kind of cool, although there was part of me who thought that, like, once you were a Death Knight and then you died, you were, like, dead for good. It's so funny to see that it was just like, oh no, he was a Death Knight and then he died, but you know what? I'm just going to bring him back again because Lich King powers.
Yeah, they haven't really fleshed out the specific rules as to how, you know, when is the Death Knight really dead? Can they be brought back? I mean, the previous Four Horsemen, well, 3 of the previous 4 Horsemen were brought back. Mm-hmm. There's definitely precedent for rezzing people more than once, but it's funny because I, for some reason, thought that, like, you get 1 extra shot, but apparently you get infinity extra shots. Yes. So that's more or less where we end. I mean, there was a bit tacked on recently with getting our class mount, but there's really not much there. You bring new Frostworms into the equation. It's pretty cool, and you get to go back to and a Lich King 5-man to go and get Rhyme Fang's, I think his saddle or something. I forget exactly what the artifact is, but it's awesome. We get to go back to one of the 5-man patch dungeons from Wrath of the Lich King.
Very cool.
But beyond that, I mean, really the big lore beat here is that the Four Horsemen are back, and it's 4 of the most notable champions from both the Horde, the Alliance, and also the Death Knights.
Mm-hmm. So here is where kind of my question comes in. So the Death Knight campaign is bringing back the Four Horsemen, assuming that we defeat the Legion. What do you think that means for the Lich King and for Azeroth? Because I know you've mentioned before that there are basically, as a Frost Death Knight, images of Arthas, the kind of visions that come to you that serve as warnings against kind of trusting Bolvar, which, I mean, that could just be like Lich King jealousy. He's like, oh, that was totally my job, and now Bolvar's doing it, and I don't trust him because he's a big jerk because I want to do it again. Or it could be like legit warnings. So that's kind of my first question is what does that really mean? Like having the Four Horsemen back and the Lich King, like where does that story go? Because the Lich King lore is not something I'm like crazy super big on. It's kind of one of the big, like, I know the Arthas story, but I don't know a whole lot necessarily about all of the things surrounding actual like Wrath of the Lich King lore.
I mean, this is really uncharted territory for the most part. Knights of the Even Blade specifically. I don't know. I don't know where it's going. Arthas is there are 2 main memories of Arthas, and by the way, you'll only see this if you go through the leveling zones as in your Frost spec, because you are wielding remnants of Frostmourne, and so visions of Arthas appear out in the world. He appears in every zone, but really only 2 of them are warnings. One, he says, you exist by his will alone. You imagine yourself to be free, but you will always be his instrument. And the other one is, you believe that you are in control, that your will is your own, yet you do as he commands.
Well, so yeah, this is kind of the finale of my question then. Given the Death Knight campaign, and I mean, basically the Lich King shows up and says, you shall resurrect the Four Horsemen, and you're kind of like, okie dokie. And then he says, these are the ones that you're going to like res to be these Four Horsemen, regardless of warnings from the other Ebon Blade members, regardless of, you know, the impact it would have on the Horde and Alliance and the way people would view you. Do they possess a will of their own, or are they still just members of the Scourge?
Well, here's there's a game answer, and then there's my lore hopes. I mean, if you meta knowledge of the fact that this is an MMO and they're not going to take away our Death Knight characters, I would say yes, they have their own free will, because how are you going to reconcile that from a gameplay perspective?
That's true, yeah, from a gameplay perspective. Although, I mean, I feel like you could have some sort of confrontation or something, maybe, where you break the final threads of control the Lich King has over you or something. I feel like there could be a really cool little instance there for Death Knights at some point.
That's what I hope happens. I could even...
Because it sounds like you're still a puppet. I'm sorry, Garrett.
I'm totally fine. I'm a badass puppet. I'm the most badass marionette on the block. Bring it on. I mean, there's precedence that has already happened within the lore of World of Warcraft for the Even Blade having free will to a certain extent, because they helped kill Arthas. If they were still a puppet on a string, I'm sure that would have gone down differently.
So I wonder then if maybe over the years since Arthas's fall, I wonder if Bolvar has potentially gotten stronger and is kind of exerting a sort of control over you that you don't even maybe realize.
I mean, yeah, I would assume that we're still susceptible to control.
Suggestions?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been explicitly stated that how the control was broken in the first place, anything of that nature, but I'm not sure. I'm just excited to see where it does go.
Well, I think, I mean, specifically looking at Sylvanas, basically what happened with her and how she gained control was essentially the power of the Lich King was waning before Arthas actually fully took control and put on the helm and everything else. So I feel like potentially there was like a waning power. Arthas lost control of some, which is kind of where Death Knights come in. And then now Bolvar has slowly been gaining power, so he's potentially gaining control over those who had previously been lost.
Yeah, that's very possible, and I'm just not sure. I don't. The big question for me, at some point, I think this needs to be reconciled. The question for me is when do they do it? Where does this slot in? Is it before the, I think, oncoming confrontation with the remaining old gods, or after?
Yeah, I don't know. I really, really don't know, because there's so many, when it comes to Death Knights, there's so many like intertwining themes and powers, because I mean, even when you guys are talking about it in the chat room right now, like the Lich King technically is an agent of the Legion, because Ner'zhul was controlled by the Legion, and it's his spirit that kind of powers / corrupts the helm. And so, I mean, there's elements of the Legion. So is the Lich King himself now rebelling against the Legion? Are Death Knights as a class going to aid the Legion in the end? Like, you know, is Ner'zhul is Bolvar resurrecting the 4 Horsemen so that he and the Horsemen and the Scourge can fight for the Legion? Like, what's going on? Like, and there's so many different potential ways they could go with this, because there's so many threads that kind of come together in the Lich King and Death Knights.
That would be a route they could go, but I don't know. That's not the Lich King story as I see it. I see the story of the Lich King as a story of, you know, a player, you know, in this war, in this great war over the course of everything that's happened to Warcraft, that was betrayed by the Legion, broke free of the Legion, and became its own
entity,
large
like
player
power
in the game.
Yeah,
right. Like it now, like at this point, the Lich King is and the Scourge are their own entity, free of the influence of the Legion, the old gods, whatever. They're their own. It's our first kind of like Azeroth born threat, really. Like the old gods came from somewhere else, the Legion came from somewhere else. Yes, the Scourge were, you know, they're a byproduct of the Legion, but they now pull their own strings. They have their own agenda. So I would be surprised if that's what happens, if somehow Bolvar, that'd be really cool if like, and Bolvar's back in service of the Legion, or the Lich King is now helping the Legion again. But I can't imagine that's the case.
I don't think that they're going to go that way, because we already know that we're going to go to Argus. So I mean, we're kind of leaving Azeroth behind. I think if they were going to make the Lich King fall on the side of the Legion, it would have already happened, because I think we're getting to the point now in World of Warcraft in the story where we're basically done with the Legion. We still have to kind of go through the motions. We have to defeat, you know, the Legion at the Tomb of Sargeras, push them back, go to Argus, kill them there in a raid or two, and, you know, do some shenanigans over there. But, you know, we're basically coming to the end of the story of the Burning Legion.
Yes.
And we're getting to the point where we are going to win our battle against them. And we know this because of all the things that Blizzard has told us. So I think the time of the Legion is ending. So I think that it's very much like the Lich King is going to be his own thing. But it's just interesting because of the origins of the figure of the Lich King, of the different things that they could do with the Lich King and Death Knights going forward. So I'm interested to see how it kind of progresses, but I was super interested to talk to you about it, because like I say, that the Ebon Blade and Death Knights in general is kind of a hole in my lore knowledge, just because I started a Death Knight, but it was so long ago. Like I did it 4 years ago, probably. It was probably the second or third character I created was actually a Death Knight. So I kind of played through the opening part. So I remember like doing the Light's Hope and all of that different stuff, and how you're doing what Arthas says. And then, but even that kind of starting zone for the Death Knights is shaky in my memory. So yeah, it was good to chat with you about this, Garrett, because you're so like Arthas Death Knight, yes.
Pretty much, yeah.
This
cool.
This is really cool to talk to you about.
The corner of Warcraft I really enjoy, and I'm just excited. I'm excited to see where it is. I mean, good God, are we going to get another expansion we have to deal with Boulevard the Lich King, and what does that look like? Because I can't imagine we're ever going to return to an existing continent for a new piece of content. I just don't see Blizzard going that route. I don't see them repurposing Northrend and we launch another campaign out there. But I could be wrong. They could have a really cool idea for that I'm just not seeing.
Yeah, I don't really know where we're going to go for the next expansion. I know what I think that the next expansion is going to be. I think it's going to be Old Gods. I think it's going to focus on Azeroth, but I really hope that doesn't mean an underwater continent and we just have to swim all the time, because that's awful.
No. I think if anything, a land mass would erupt from the sea.
They could go that route. That's right.
Yeah, and that could be pretty cool. Again, they'd have to get creative to make sure it doesn't all look samey, but
yeah.
But I'd be interested to see what they have to. And who knows? It could be. I mean, we deal with multiple story threads in every expansion, and the Lich King could be a side thread, even in the next expansion, or who knows what. But I'm excited to see where they take the story, because the fact that we have a new set of 4 Horsemen that were cherry picked by the new Lich King. What the hell? What does the world look like after that? Because there's got to be some reconciliation for that. The Horde, the Alliance, there's a lot of mad people right now. There should be.
Yeah, and I find it interesting, too, that he starts the whole campaign for the 4 Horsemen by saying that there's a price that the living can't pay. Like, I'm really interested to see where they take that and what the Lich King thinks that price is going to be. So I hope that you get more story with your class hall, and I hope that there's some sort of resolution there. I hope they don't just leave that hanging, because it feels like he's almost got like insider info.
Yeah, I don't know. It almost sounds to me like the 4 Horsemen are not long for this world. Like maybe they're going to die in service of beating back the Legion.
Possibly.
Because they're technically not alive.
True.
And it's not like the living were going to go and dig up their champions and resurrect them and bring them into battle. These were all things that only the Death Knights could pull off. And the thing I really enjoyed about this, and I didn't really realize until we've now been doing for Azeroth, and especially talking about characters like Illidan, characters like Kael'thas, who have gone and done terrible things in service of what they think is right. Playing through the Death Knight Order Hall, you get to do that. You get to experience your own Illidan moments where you're doing terrible things to help save Azeroth.
Right.
And that's they did a good job. They did a really good job. I think WoW is in good hands from a story aspect right now, which is makes me feel good, because I've had very mixed emotions with Chris Metzen leaving Blizzard and thus leaving the stories of Warcraft, StarCraft, and Diablo. And Overwatch.
Yeah, I think that was really a scary point for a lot of us. I think Chris left and we all kind of went, but our lore. So yeah. I'm glad that you, as a Death Knight and as an Arthas fanboy, were really happy the way that your campaign went.
Yeah. Hey man, I think Star Wars is in a great place too, and Lucas is gone, and
sometimes that helps. Sometimes a new vision can really help a property. So as long as the people who have or who kind of take over are just as passionate about it as the ones that left, I think that it's going to be in good hands.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I think we've been seeing now, like we're at that age where we're seeing a lot of pop culture, a lot of fiction that is very important to us being handed off to the next generation, and it's happening across multiple properties. We're seeing it with Marvel, we're seeing it with Star Wars, we're seeing it now with Blizzard. And so far, I think it's turning out pretty damn well across the board.
I agree.
So, well, let's round this out with an email. Folks, you can send your emails to FAZpodcast, that is FAZpodcast@gmail.com. Who's writing in this week, Jocelyn?
This one comes to us from Jonathan, who says, "Hey guys, I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, all of them, and I've really been enjoying for Azeroth. I've played WoW since the very beginning and was never really into the lore until my son started playing. He's almost as big a lore nerd as Jocelyn. He's now 19 years old and pursuing his lifelong dream of being a fantasy novelist. I've been reading fantasy for a long time, and I know I'm probably biased, but he's really good. Right now, he's just trying to build an audience, but it's been slow going, and I'm sure you know how that goes. he dabbles in the occasional WoW fan fiction, and the one he wrote recently really resonated with me. I decided to share it on the WoW subreddit, so there's a link in our show notes if you guys want to go check that out. And I thought I would throw it your way too. I'm just trying to get his good work out there so he can live his dream. Thanks for all you do. So I was only able to get through about half of the story before we had to do the show this morning, but I was really, really impressed. So I decided to throw this into the show because I think it deserves a plug. It's really well written, and it's a story about Kil'jaeden, and it's basically taking place on like a planet that we've never heard of with races we've never heard of, but it's super creative. And I felt like I was reading a WoW short story. I actually thought it was better written than some of the WoW novels that I've read. Because, I mean, you guys know I'm a huge Christy Golden fangirl. And if anyone else writes WoW, I just think it's not as good. But this, I think, is right up there with some of Christy Golden's stuff. It was really well done. I don't know how it ends yet, so maybe that's, you know, like there's some big, horrible, terrible ending. But at least the first 5 pages were really awesome. So it's about, I think it's 9 pages long, and I've read about 5 of them. And it was really well written. It was like the character acting like I thought he would act, but then there were these other characters and these other ideas in there, and I was really blown away by it. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. And the other thing I wanted to note is actually Super Joe, who is a listener, has set up a FAZpodcast Reddit. So if you guys want to share your, lore theories, if you guys want to go in there and talk to us about basically anything you're doing in Warcraft or anything you want to talk about, or do something like share your son's writing, then please do head on over to the FAZpodcast Reddit. It's actually r/for Azeroth, I believe, which I'm so surprised. We were talking about this. We actually were interviewed on Realm Maintenance last week, and we were talking about the name of the show, For Azeroth, and we're like, how is this not taken?
Yeah.
I feel exactly the same about this Reddit. Like, how is there not a For Azeroth Reddit already? But
I don't know. We really lucked out. I love the name of this show, by the way, and I love the abbreviation of Faz. It just makes me happy. And yeah, actually, side pimp there. Make sure you go and listen to. It's going up today as of recording this. It might even be up already, but go and listen to the latest episode of Realm Maintenance if you want to hear Jocelyn and I interviewed by Ro about starting the show and kind of how it all came about. Especially if you missed. Embrace the spoilers. Yeah, if you missed Embrace the Spoilers, or at least the Warcraft portion of Embrace the Spoilers, we kind of tell that whole story of how this show came to be. So go and give that a listen. And while I'm in pimpage mode, there's a Kickstarter right now that we would both like to promote. It's a party, a con before the storm, some might say, a convention that takes place the night before BlizzCon every year. It's called Con Before the Storm. They are currently funding their conference over at kickstarter.conbeforestorm.com. There is no "the" in that URL, but it is called Con Before the Storm. And Jocelyn, you and I have attended this party multiple years in a row. I was on a panel last year, which was super awesome, and they put me up there with people I'm a big fan of. So it was an absolute treat. But it's just put on by fans. It's put on by other fellow podcasters. They do a phenomenal job. They put a lot of work into it. And our A-Move TV and Frog Pants meetup that we usually do at the bowling alley every year, we are actually their first stretch goal, which they are only a few $100s away from at this very moment. So if we have that, instead of being a mile away from the conference, we're going to be right next door in the Hilton, having our party as part of Con Before the Storm, but we'll have our own room, our own bartender, all of that jazz. So you can walk over, you can have dinner downstairs, come right up and party with us. And on top of that, you will be supporting, I think, one of the best community events at BlizzCon. They really do put on a good show. So even if you're not interested in our party, considering supporting Con Before the Storm. So go check it out.
Yeah, they do a lot of really, really cool things. There's this one, and then Well Played Party, which happens on the Friday night. And between the Thursday night party and the Friday night party, just, oh man, the fans are throwing some really amazing get-togethers. So they absolutely deserve your support because it doesn't come free. The Hilton's not just like, oh, hey, you need space? Here you go.
Yeah.
So, any help that you can give them, because the gatherings themselves are actually free to attend. So I think that's kind of another thing that we should point out is that
you don't have to,
You don't have to pay to go.
Yeah, well, I want to make it abundantly clear that we're not getting a cent from this. I mean, yes, we will get a space to host a party, which is saving us an obscene amount of money and also saving us an immense amount of work to actually coordinate everything. So it's so excruciatingly kind of the Calm Before the Storm crew to offer to do this for us, which so I'm more than happy to promote their cause. I would have promoted it anyway. I promoted it last year. Told you all to come out and see me on the Hearthstone panel. And again, we weren't even doing anything there. I was just showing up and talking to a microphone for a little while. So I really do love this party. So go and check them out. And if nothing else, come on out the night before BlizzCon, no matter what happens. But I have a feeling we can raise like $300 more. I think we'll do it. I think we can do this, guys. So we thank them for that, and we thank you all for listening. That's going to bring us to the end of this show. Don't forget to subscribe to For Azeroth if you have not already on iTunes or over at youtube.com/amovetv. And you can catch us Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time over at twitch.tv/amovetv. If you're not already following that channel, go and do that, or catch us on alphageekmedia.com. Jocelyn, when you're not just like fazzing out, what else are you doing?
Oh my God, I love that.
Really?
I am going to say that so much from now on. Whenever I'm excited about anything Warcraft related, I'm going to be fazzing out, guys.
Fazzing out with my spaz out.
Yeah. Oh man, I need that on a t-shirt. You can follow me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. You can also find the shows that I do over on AMove TV, including The Gamers Inn, which is live at 8 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night on twitch.tv/AMoveTV. It's my general gaming podcast. You can also check me out with Jules from Torrent Think Tank and our friend Quoted Nevermore. We do a self-help podcast where we talk all about our inner demons. That is on twitch.tv/Joss Plays every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's called Slaying Demons, so go and check that out.
Awesome. Folks, I'm on Twitter. It's at Garrett Art. There are 2 R's and 2 T's in the word Garrett. Art is spelt correctly.
Just with one R and one T.
Exactly.
It'd be hilarious if you were like, Garrett Art. With like 2 R's and 2 T's in art.
Just a bunch of R's and then it's pirate art. That should be.
Yeah.
That's really
Garrett Art.
Art. That's really dumb. Every other podcast I do can be found at amove.tv, including many that Jocelyn herself is also on. I would like to, you promoted Slaying Demons. I have a show where I air a lot of my dirty laundry publicly. It's called The Angry Nerd. Really, usually it's just me talking about life, the woes of making podcasts. And on the most recent episode, I went on a rant I had a lot of fun with about the back catalog of Nintendo's games and how it's the worst thing about it's simultaneously the best and worst thing about Nintendo. So go and give that a listen. The Angry Nerd.
You should do one about raising a puppy.
Oh, I have words on that.
You have words on a lot of things, but I feel like right now puppies are relevant.
Yeah, I love Zelda. She, much like Nintendo's back catalog, simultaneously puts a smile on my face every day and also makes me want to kill things.
Puppies in a nutshell.
Yeah, go check that out. Everything else is at amove.tv. And until next time, everyone, good luck, have fun, and maybe don't go desecrate the bodies of the champions of the Horde and the Alliance.
Thank you, Garrett. Art.
No!